Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Tia.
And I'm your host, Koya.
Welcome to the Wig Life Podcast.
For wig lovers and wearers navigating life.
Because it's not just wigs, it's life.
Let's get into the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Wig Life Podcast. This is Wigs Marketing and Cultural Appropriation Part 2, you guys. Just a little context to that video. If you are watching this one for the first time, there is a part 1, and that was actually filmed in January, right? Was that January, Tia?
Yeah, months ago.
Yeah, it was filmed months ago, and so me and Tia, of course, the episode just came out last Wednesday, and we were able to see it, and we both have reflected and had realized that there's things that we still felt like we wanted to say and definitely clear up and address that happened in part 1, and then also really making it clear some of the things that we were trying to get across and say in part 1 that we couldn't or didn't, because this conversation, especially, I think, when it came to the cultural appropriation part, really is a very, like we said in part 1, a very nuanced subject, a very tough subject. And there's a lot there. And I think we both, not only just thinking about ourselves, but thinking about our audience, wanted to make points and get things clear. And we both felt like certain things just weren't really made as clear as they should be. And I know as far as for me, I know the conversation definitely got into a lot of colorism as opposed to cultural appropriation. And one thing that I really want to speak to and make clear is that cultural appropriation and colorism are two separate things. They're two separate things. And I'm not going to spend too much time on colorism, but I do want to just speak to colorism is something that exists within minority communities, especially in westernized countries and countries that have been colonized or have ever practiced slavery, because essentially what happens is it comes in and it sets up white or Eurocentric standards of beauty and privilege. And so the further you are from that, the less privilege you have, the less you're looked down upon. And so because of that, it creates colorisms within these little groups amongst themselves, because they know the people that are closer to that are getting more privileges and getting things that they cannot get because of their color and different things. And so we kind of got into that. And I want to be clear, because I know I have gotten so much that people were kind of, not sure of what she was meaning when she was saying but you're not like that. You aren't like that. And you were speaking to, colorism and your experiences that you have had from both white and Black communities with addressing you with being biracial. And so you see a lot of that in part 1, and you discussing, your experiences with that and your hurt with that. And so I just wanted to be clear, when you were saying to me, you not like that, you were saying basically, I have not treated you in a certain way based on that. So that is essentially what, Tia was speaking to. So, and, I totally understand that. I also, as we were talking and getting into like the textures of hair, because we know a lot of the listeners, especially, and people who watch our videos, right? They have questions about wearing certain wigs, certain styles. And I think no one essentially really wants to be appropriating anyone's culture or, doing that. But like we said in part 1, sometimes what we intend to do and what happens don't always align. And so we just wanted to make sure that we're making it really clear what we feel that cultural appropriation is. And so when we got into like texture, and we were kind of disagreeing on the textures, different, types of textures, because Tia, I know we have had conversations where you were thinking of it in as just synthetic, just actual fibers, but I'm thinking of it as it's representing certain hair, because I know that people are asking the question based on they don't want to appropriate. They don't want to be wearing a certain texture or, whatever that they're appropriating. There are things that are There's exceptions to every rule, but there are things that are very, very particular to certain cultures, right? And we all know that there are braids, and then there are braids that are specifically from Black or African American culture. And there's French braids, there's twists, and then there's Fulani braids, or there's cornrows. So those are two types of different braids. They're all braids, but some certain styles are specifically Black or African American culture, and some are just braids. So if a person was to wear those braids, they could, and they are not Black, are not perceived as, because that's one of the things, right? We were talking about being biracial. Sometimes people can't always tell or know if you truly are a part of that culture just by your features or what you look like. So if you are wearing those styles, we know that those styles come from that culture. So are you taking those styles and wearing those styles without actually being a part of the culture? And so watching it back, I realized, like, you were kind of asking, because I know you have told me, just us talking personally, a lot of times online, you are accused of appropriating. And so I know you were asking that, and I didn't realize that in the moment because I was so busy being in my mind and trying to think of a way to explain textures and get the points that I was trying to make, that I kind of got out of the conversation. And so I want to make it clear that this is my opinion of what cultural appropriation is. When you take something that is not from a culture you are a part of and you wear it. Now, there are going to be people who are going to have a problem with you wearing it just because you are not a part of the culture. They don't feel like you should be participating or doing things in the culture if you're not a part of it. That is people's opinions. I can't speak yes or no to that. That is not my opinion, but that is their opinion. So there will be people who will be offended if you are not Black and you're wearing cornrows. There are people who are me, who are Black, and if you wear cornrows, I'm not necessarily offended by that. But there are people who are. And so those people would say that you are culturally appropriating. For me, where I would say where your culture appropriately, or the issue that I have with it, is when you take something from the culture and then you wear it and you receive something from it, and then you don't acknowledge where it truly came from. For me, that's where I have a problem with it. With the Bo Derek situation, that is what I was trying to speak to, right? So I know in part one, if you haven't watched it, Tia was speaking about Bo Derek's hair being like curly or wavy, and they were trying to, braid her hair or fix her hair in a way to where they could shoot the scene and it wouldn't be like a mess, right? Tia, I can't remember everything.
When I said the reason that they braided her hair that way, I do recall reading that. That happened a long time ago. I do actually recall reading it in a magazine. I have, looked that up because someone was questioning, and her natural hair is not curly. I'm not sure if it was just me remembering an article, or if they could have been talking about multiple women in one article. This is back when you got your magazines. And I tried to actually find it online, but because of the whole Kim Kardashian thing, that now is buried with the issues that resurfaced because of it.
Yeah.
But what I did find was this, and this is something I actually didn't quite share with you. So this is something that I think I have a question on. So it would be a good, I think, opportunity to ask a question. So this was the thing. They braided her hair up until this year in January. She still calls them cornrows. In her mind, they are cornrows. They're not Fulani braids. She's not correct. Okay, because right, you're saying they are Fulani braids.
Yeah, they're Fulani braids, or you would say Fulani braids, or you could even say feed-ins. I mean, some people may refer to them as cornrows because of the styling of them, but they're really feed-ins, but are Fulani braids are what they really are.
Okay.
And so she was calling cornrows.
She is still basically, she's still basically saying there's no point. The point is that she's not referring to them correctly. Yes. So that's the start of it.
Yes.
And then if you are in your 20s or whatever, and you don't know that, you're like, I just want to be Bo Derek and wear these braids and wear this bathing suit. Okay. Still appropriating. But I guess my question is, how does someone, because I think even for myself, but I think for a lot of people who are not of color, a braid is a braid is a braid. Now it shouldn't be that. So it's like, what do you do if if you're like, oh, I just want to be Bo Derek, and like she braided her hair and she wore this little skimpy bikini, so that's what I'm going to do. Then you're appropriating without knowing it.
Right.
So what about that scenario? That's just what I'm asking. Like, what if you don't realize that you're doing it?
Again, I agree with you. I think a lot of times that is what happens, right? Is people see something, they're like, oh, that's cool. I want to wear that, or I want to try that, but they don't know where it comes from. And so I think that is why the person who wants to wear these things has the responsibility of making it clear where they got it from. So Bo Derek gets the Fulani braids, right?
Okay.
Because again, they could have braided her hair in any style. They chose a style that comes from Black, African American, and African culture. They took a very specific style, right? So us as Black people, Black women, we know what that is. That's a part of our culture. I've had those braids, my mom, my sister, I've grown up knowing, right? I know that's a part of my culture. So then this movie comes out and Bo Derek gets really famous. Everybody's like, ooh, these braids are gorgeous. These braids are beautiful, blah, blah, blah. Then to me, then the responsibility would have been on Bo Derek to give credit to, I got these braids from wherever she's seen them or whatever, and give honor to that culture. So that way, years from now, when people see the braids, they will know that Bo Derek wore them, but they came from African Fulani braids. Does that make sense? So
yeah,
that is where I would find. So now, years later, because Bo Derek did not acknowledge that, right? Then you have Kim Kardashian coming along and she's saying she's giving Bo Derek credit. And so Black women, right, we're getting upset because we know Bo Derek did not create those. She did not originate those. This is from our culture. So that is what they were speaking to. And so I know that is what I was trying to speak to in part one, when I was saying it's very hurtful, because there's an actual law that is being worked on, legislation being worked on, called the Crown Act, which is allowing and giving Black people permission to wear their hair in some of our natural styles and not be fired for that, because we could inherently lose our jobs for that. And that is our natural culture. That is something that we wear to not only just look, I know a lot of people think they're stylish, and they are, but a lot of times we're really wearing it to protect our hair, because our hair, the texture of it, takes a lot of care and a lot of maintenance. And sometimes just to get a break from having to do that and to protect it from doing so much manipulation, you braid it, whether it's cornrows, the Fulani twist, feed ins, box braids, Singali twist. We have like a bazillion different ways, but essentially we are doing that also not only to just be stylish, but a lot of times it is to protect our hair, to make it easier. So you have this person who is not of the culture, comes in with the style, gets praised for it, and then when you wear it, you could lose your job, you could be fired, or get the repercussions of that. Then she wears it, she gets popular, it's this big thing. And then I think she even said in an article, Black women were thanking her for wearing her hair like that, because then they were allowed to come to work and wear their hair like that, which is it's insulting, because that is our natural hair, but now because you do it, now it's okay. And so that is where the emotions come in. That's where the hurt comes in. That is why cultural appropriation is really hurtful to people, because it's essentially giving credit and making something okay when somebody else does it, but shunning you when you do it. And that was the point that I was trying to make in part one. And hopefully it's clearer now in part two, that I'm better to really articulate what it is and what I mean by that. So that is the whole issue with that, is, the credit is not being given to where it's coming from. And so it would kind of be like if you're at your job, right, and you come up with this great idea and you share it, and then somebody sees it or hears it and is like, that's a really cool idea. And then they go present it and they get all this credit for it. And it blows, and they're like, then you're like, wait a minute, that was my idea. That's not his. It's the same kind of thing. I know that this is mine. Now you're getting all this credit for it, and it's not even yours. And that's why it's feeling like it's being stolen. Well, it ain't feeling like it is. That's like stealing and getting credit for something that the people who actually have invented it are taking it as not getting credit for.
Where I see it's even going more in the ditch and really falling into the stolen is because once you get so far away, especially in this era of social media and the internet, things get buried. So,
Correct.
Someone not even knowing to ask is because it was never, like you're saying, was never said in the first place. And unfortunately, and this is not a Bo Derek thing, but I just do think that we need to say this because I think this happens a lot.
Yeah.
Let's give her the benefit of the doubt that she's calling them cornrows and she didn't know. It was her husband's idea. He talked, that's what the article says, because I read many articles because I really wanted to get the crux of this. But these articles that I was reading that I was sharing with you, and she was just like, oh, Black women were praising. I mean, that was written this year and last year. This is not like the whole point of doing this episode was really to gain clarity, but to understand that sometimes it can be 2020. Sometimes you can get realizations that you didn't have in the moment. That's where it's a little disappointing. Not more, it's very disappointing that say she didn't know at the time. Okay, right. But then to like you're going to die on this hill of making it okay and getting such, like now Black women were praising her. She says that. I think that would be strange, especially then. It doesn't seem in line with even what was going on in the culture at that time, but okay, I just think the fact of like what you're saying is continually be like, I didn't do this, or like she could have just said, wow, I didn't even know that, my bad. I wish someone would have told me.
Right.
And then that would have been the top article, right? And that would have shown somebody like, even if you do something unintentionally, you should still acknowledge it and move forward.
Yes.
But she didn't take that opportunity. So it is what it is, I guess. But that's the thing. So when these things happen, and especially when it's in like culture and in pop culture, if it's not acknowledged at some point, it does then get buried. And then it is like stolen, because even if someone researched, they wouldn't necessarily know. Right. So that's where that's that very slippery slope that we all have to be more mindful about.
Yes, I would 1000% agree. You have to really know. So for example, I really love Indian headdresses. I think they are beautiful. And I was going to dress like that for Halloween at one point because I think they're beautiful. And when all these conversations start coming out about cultural appropriation, and Native Americans said, we don't, it is not a costume. We find that very insulting. Guess what? It doesn't matter that I think it's beautiful. If I'm going to offend potentially somebody by wearing that as a costume, then I'm not going to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? For me, it's just that simple. Then I'm not going to do it. Now, other people may feel like, no, it's pretty and I want to wear it. That's for your own personal judgment and morality to decide what you're going to do in that situation. I know there was an interview one time when Rihanna was talking to a Native American. I can't remember who she was talking to, but anyway, she said, that's my spirit animal. And the Native American person told her, that's very offensive, to me. And she was like, enough said, she didn't, I'll never say it again. And that was the end of it. So, you have to decide within your own self what you're going to do. But I think that's part of why it's important, like you said, to have these conversations and to know things. And I think it is on you, because even if Bo Derek personally, didn't know the hairstyle or the braids, her husband did, or whoever did those braids knew where they got them from.
Yeah,
it is their job. Yeah, somebody does. So they didn't just fall out of the sky. Somebody's seen them somewhere on something. And so it is up to that person to let people know. Now don't get me wrong, there is situations, like, for example, I travel for a living. I have been to Japan and I love Japanese culture. So I will, I eat Japanese food. I do have a kimono, but I am not going to just wear that out as like some just, trying to make some fashion statement or do some things, because I understand that culturally it represents things, but it's not for Japanese people to educate me on that. It was for me, right? This is their culture. If I want to be respectable to them and respect their culture, then it is on me to learn about the things that I like about their culture and to respect it and know that the colors mean things, that people wear them for weddings and different occasions that are important in that culture. So it is important to, respect people's cultures and respect the things and learn. And if somebody was to ask me, I wouldn't act like I don't know where I got if I was to wear the kimono out to a wedding or something and I'm participating in the culture and somehow I got popular famous for it, then I would definitely reference and let people know this is where it comes from and this is where I got it from, as showing of respect to other, to their culture and to that culture. So, it's a very, like you said, one of the main reasons why when we came up with this topic, I agreed to talk about it is because I feel like one of the things that is being missed a lot of times in these conversations when it comes to talking about hairstyles, because we know Black culture is big on hairstyles. And since this podcast is inherently about, like wigs and hair, I really felt like as a Black woman, I have a lot of important things that I can bring to the conversation, because in a lot of times people will say it's just a hairstyle. Because I know even Bo Derek at one point tweeted, well, it's just a hairstyle, but it's not just a hairstyle if I wear it to work and I lose my job. Yeah, so if I go to my job and I wear it and I lose my job, is it really just a hairstyle? If an athlete wears it and they're kicked off the team and they can't participate in the sports, is it just a hairstyle? So these are the things that I feel like are not, in my opinion, really conveyed well, as far as when it comes to culture, taking things from Black culture and wearing it. I feel like that isn't really articulated well. And I just really wanted to make sure, and I didn't feel like part one, I really did that to the best of my ability. And I wanted to make sure that I really, cleared that up for people who are asking. And I know in one of the comments, there was a woman on part one's video, and she specifically asked and said, I have wigs that I like that are from, I don't want to say it wrong, but I believe she specifically said that that they are, like hairstyles that come from Black culture. And she knows if she was to wear them out, that she, would get comments or be looked at about it. And unfortunately, yes, there are some people who are going to be offended by that. And the only thing, that I can say to that is, if you want to wear them, you are grown. You have the right to wear whatever it is you want to wear, but you also have to know that it could be offensive to some people, and some people may be offended by that. And I wish I had the answer right. I'd be probably a gazillionaire if I could be like, well, yeah, if you just do it like this is what's make it right. Everybody has their own opinions and feelings about their culture and about other cultures. And so, you're not going to change that. But the point, I feel like, of this conversation and of these videos is to just give you more tools and give you more knowledge and give you more things to think about when you are making decisions, as far as like hairstyles and, doing those type of things, making better, clearer decisions so that you can make a informed decision. Whatever you decide to do with it, the information is on you, but at least you are informed. And I would say, yeah, like I said before, me personally, no, I would not be offended by that, but there are some people who would be.
So I just read her comment again, because I read that too. And she says she doesn't wear them out.
She doesn't wear them out, right?
She doesn't want to be offensive.
Exactly.
No, yeah. She says, I'm terrified to offend somebody.
Yeah.
She's asking though. So this is where it's diverging from cultural appropriation, because she's explaining her history, and she does live in the South.
Yes.
And we know even today,
yes,
there's a lot of things that happen in the South. She's basically saying she wasn't saying, she's actually asked, it's multiple questions, boom, boom, boom. She's saying,
Okay.
like, as a white woman, when can I
Yeah.
just like embrace these things because they're wonderful and I love them, and like her her child's father is Black. Like, when can I do that without being made to be out to be like racist or something? I think what she's saying is, she says, what is the end goal? Can we ever transcend some of this stuff? And I don't know that this topic specifically, I feel like that's actually, like, just like with the colorism, I think it's kind of a slightly separate topic, but you tell me what you think.
Um, I would tell her, unfortunately, you're talking about, like when we're speaking of the South, right? Um, the South historically was very heavy on slavery. Slavery was a huge part of Southern culture. And out of slavery came a lot of, came the Jim Crow laws and this whole thing where we were talking about colorism, and essentially racism was born out of that. And so slavery happened for 400 years, and then you had, after that, then you still had segregation and all the other things, the Jim Crow laws and all those things. So to think that we're going to unravel hundreds of years, it's going to take a lot of time. And I think the start of it is doing things like this, is having these conversations like this, and having the uncomfortable conversations. Because I know one of the things that happens when you have these type of conversations is it makes people feel very uncomfortable. And it should, right? Because it's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of very ugly things in racism. It's a very ugly thing. So that you should have those feelings. And there is a level of discomfort. But I do want to say, as a Black woman, that is the discomfort that we live with every day. That's our reality. Every day we know that these standards that we cannot fit in exist, and keep us from certain privileges and keep us from certain things, right? Those we always talk about, especially during the pandemic, right? That time with the George Floyd, we were talking about biases, right? That whole system created all these biases that you are constantly having to live under and know exist. So to her, I would say, just continue to educate yourself. And I think the great thing is, that it can offend people and you don't want to do that. I think that is awesome. Will the day ever come that you will be able to participate and take part in the culture without offending people? I don't know. I don't know if that day will ever come. I would hope it does, and I would pray it does, because that is, to me, the beauty of cultures, is to experience it and take a part in it, even if you are not of it, right? But also respecting it. And I think you are being respectful of it by saying, even though I like it, I love it, I will not do it because I don't want to offend people. I think you're on the right path. And my thing to you would just be to continue to just be open, continue to learn. And hopefully one day, I don't know when, I feel like if I had the actual answer to that, girl.
I don't think that it would. I think you made, I took a couple notes on some things I think you made really good points on. And one of them is in general, when you're talking about uncomfortable. Yeah. But growth and change and evolution is always uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So having these uncomfortable conversations is the only way to get to the other side of any understanding, period. Yeah. So I think that was really important. And then you said about experience. And I know someone, it wasn't in the comments, but someone said to me that they had a hard time wrapping their head around the fact that you said you could be fired for wearing certain types of hairstyles. They're a white person. Yes. And what I hope people get out of that, and what you and I have talked about before, is it may be hard to wrap your head around it, but it is true, and it's an experience, and it's your experience, and that's your understanding. And so we can come to an understanding of someone else's experience without it being our own experience. And I think sometimes we operate from our own experience first. And so, Yeah. Does it seem really ludicrous in 2023 that someone could be fired for their hair texture? Absolutely. But like what you were saying, slavery, racism, all those things. I mean, let's be real. It's not even like done yet. You know, I mean, it's not like, okay, well, because
Yeah.
that's what people say. Like, we don't want to have to, pay the price for the sins of our forefathers, whatever. But let's be real. This stuff's still happening now. It's not like we've been free of racism even for 10 years, even for 5 years, even for 2 years. So, yes, slavery may have been X amount of years ago, but like, just because it's illegal doesn't mean there wasn't, like you're saying, oppression, appropriation, like that stuff's still happening and happening on a regular. So the fact that like people, let's say Bo Derek, because that's what we're talking about, is tweeting up until this year, it's just a hairstyle, like still, so it's never been resolved. It's never gone away. It's still here.
Right.
And just because other people don't see it doesn't mean it's not.
Right.
So I guess that's all I'm trying to say is, I don't think in our lifetime we're going to see that. We're not.
Yeah, I agree.
We're not transcending that. People aren't even acknowledging it.
Right. You know, and the Crown Act, and I will make sure that links are in the description box for the YouTube video and in the notes for if you're listening. That is a real thing. It started in 2019 so that Black people, African people, can wear their hair in this country to work in their natural and different states without getting fired for it. I'm not making this up. You can look and see for yourself. It is a real thing. You can Google, I don't know how many stories about kids in high school getting kicked off the team because they're wearing their hair in cornrows or doing, styles that come from our culture. They're wearing it and they're not getting the shine that Bo Derek is getting. They're not getting the shine that Kim is getting. They're literally losing their positions, their place. Even if you watch on Netflix, Colin Kaepernick, I'm sorry, let me pronounce his name right. Colin Kaepernick, in his story, he got cornrows and his coach told him, like, you can't have your hair like that on the team. And he was very hurt. And so his parents made him told him to go ahead and, take it down. So, why is that? Why is it okay when Bo Derek wears it, but it's not okay when I wear it? And so that's why it was a little insulting, even though I'm sure that wasn't her intention to say, well, once I did it, then Black women were like, yay, thank you, because now I can wear it. It shouldn't take Bo Derek to give them permission to wear something that is culturally theirs. You know what I mean? Like, that shouldn't even take place. If that is inherently the culture and it's done in a way that is professional, there shouldn't be any qualm about it.
No, I was just going to say, but it's like kind of also not true, because she said that in the article, and I just read this, she said that Black women at the time, so what was that, 70s? Were saying, oh yeah, thank you, and now I can do it. But you're saying this Crown Act is happening 2019. So it actually couldn't have given any permit. You know what I'm saying? Like, she can think that if she wants to, but women couldn't have been saying that to her, because it's just not, it's not even true 30, 40 years later. So, and the fact that there has to be legislation to allow this to happen.
Yeah, it's very,
just let that sit in your head, whether you believe or not believe. The fact that there has to be legislation.
Yeah. Nobody's legislating for you to have curly hair. Nobody's legislating for you to be able to wear your hair straight to work. So, it's just really unfortunate. I personally wish I had the answer. I personally wish I did. And that is part, I think, of me having these conversations and wanting it. Is I feel like that is me at least laying some seeds, laying some foundations, because like you said, someone who was white came to you and said they didn't know that, they couldn't believe that. But that is what the facts are. And so from us having the conversation and me bringing up the Crown Act and talking about it, hopefully I've educated somebody, and hopefully, when the Crown Act does need, more signatures, funding, and different things to get these laws passed, hopefully you can get behind it and support it. Those are the kind of things that you can do with dismantling systems and, taking away people's privileges and people's rights. And then, again, just really educating yourself on what things are for. And, our generation can argue, and when I say our, I'm talking about me and Tia's, and generations before us can argue, well, I really didn't know. But nowadays you can't. You can easily look something up and find something if you truly want to.
Yeah, I mean, they claim, we're claiming that we're in this like woke time, but that means you got to always be woke. You can't be, and I hate that whole woke or not, but I think the point is in exactly what Ikoya is saying. This is this generation, I even see it, is a very like open and more inquisitive, like maybe critically thinking, like, wait, that seems a little off, just about everything, anything, beauty standards, sexuality, gender. So, I mean, if you're going to have, this is the time you're so open and understanding these very specific and constraining constructs. Don't let that stop at race and culture. Don't let that stop. Do you know what I mean? Just do your homework, like you're saying.
Yeah.
I was saying from the last time, even being biracial, like there was a lot, Ikoy and I get the benefit that a lot of people don't get, is to not only have a challenging conversation, but to look at it back. And that gives you a clarity like no other, because we're going to remember different things, or maybe we didn't hear something or misunderstood it, and like in the time. And in general, we have topics and we might have like talking points, but we don't like script this. These are things that organically happen. Even looking back, like when Ikoya was talking about the texture, in my mind, in that part of the conversation, I really was thinking about it in a totally different way. And so I'm grateful to be able to be like, oh, okay, now I get it. So I need to be more mindful of certain things, whether I intended something at the time or not, which I did. I mean, I'm not ever wanting to hurt anybody. However, I didn't get certain things. I didn't get certain things. And I think, and then you can share, you didn't get certain things that I didn't get. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like, it just allows for growth, I guess.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I'm going to share that I really liked is, Tia, when you edited the video and you came back and you said, I'm really sorry, Koya, I realized, that I wasn't really getting, in the moment what you were saying. I don't feel like I really acknowledged at the time what you were saying, but I get it now. Now that I've, gotten to go back, I get it now. And I appreciate you, saying that. And I also hope for other people, because like we said, these conversations really do bring up a lot of emotion. But, once you can take the emotion out of it and just really look at it for what it is, you can get something from it. You can get something from it. And I appreciate you saying, to me, and I hope that was okay for me to share what we talked about personally. Okay. Out is that you said, I appreciated that, because I do feel like as a Black woman, a lot of times things that we say, we're not heard. And I'm not sure all the time what that is, but I do think that, happens sometimes. So I did appreciate you saying, okay, you know what, it wasn't clear, but I got it back and it's so clear to me now. I get it. And so I hope for people who may have watched part 1 and also part 2, if there's things that you are not getting, even after part 2, that you will just take the time to really if you are having any feelings of uncomfort or emotion, take it out of it and just really allow your mind to hear, what people are saying. I know there's a lot of things that Tia will tell me concerning her, and I don't want to get too far off into this because it's off of the conversation, but there's a lot of things that Tia will say to me being biracial, and some of it I can understand and relate to, and some of it I can't, but I respect that is her experience. And trying to listen and trying to learn and just add whatever value I can add to her and to her life. And so, always our intentions on all these shows are never to offend anybody. You can't help it. But we always, the intention is always to maybe educate you, open up your mind, and show you something that you maybe never, knew before or heard before. And so hopefully we have done that with this. And so if you do continue to have questions about cultural appropriation, if it's still not clear to you or what you should do, I would say when it comes to something that you've seen and you want to wear it, and I'm speaking in the terms of hair when it comes to wigs, right? But even if it isn't, if it's just something like me wanting to dress like in quote unquote Native American for Halloween and realizing, no, that's not a costume for them. This is their culture. This represents something. Could be offensive to him. Then it's like, no, you know what I'm saying? So it's not up to, just, respect things. And when you see things, really asking and wanting to know what it is, what it means, is very important. Because I think too, a lot of times people think we're wearing braids to be stylish, and to a certain extent we do things to make it stylish, but a lot of times it's just simply basic helping us to protect our hair. It's not even about, ooh, I want to be stylish. It's like, girl, I'm tired. Okay, my hair is a mess. I'm tired of combing it, doing this. I'm just gonna give it a break, and I'm gonna put it in these braids, whether it's the twist, the Falanis, all the different types of braids, but Bantu knots,
And I think, to speak to what you said, one of the main things in watching that back, and just to really put an exclamation point on something that you said in that episode, in this episode, that really hit me in an understanding. I did not, when you were talking about not being allowed to wear certain hairstyles, that was the pain that I saw from an editor's point of view, like,
yes,
real pain there. And that acknowledgement of, it isn't just a hairstyle. Like, if you're saying you can lose your job, if you're saying that your natural state of being is not acceptable for work, that's a much heavier, deep, and just a heartbreaking idea.
right.
And that's really what started me thinking about things a little differently. Not that I didn't know that, but because it's not necessarily my experience, it's not something that I think too much of or really understand too much of, because it's not my experience. But I saw the heartbreak on your face in that moment. Like, we're not talking about the 70s. We're talking about even now. The
right
act
now.
hasn't gone through. So even to this right now, people are getting fired or being told that they have to take their braids out or cut their hair off. Like, it would be ludicrous for other people to even think about, like, they'd be told to do that. But that's still your real, this time frame experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy. I mean, it's very crazy for me. And and in the video, I was getting a little emotional about it, because just the thought of it is really heavy. But really, that is the reality of it. Is, yes, if someone has a problem with it, they can say, hey, either take it down or don't work here.
I am glad that we were able to come back and have this conversation. I thank you for, sort of being a conduit to these conversations, and really, lending people a point of view that maybe they don't see or understand. And this isn't an easy, there's no, like you're saying, there's no answer, there's no right. It's just about understanding how the conversations, nothing changes, nothing evolves, nothing grows unless we can talk about it. Uncomfortable or not.
Yeah, uncomfortable or not, having the conversations and really just taking the time to, like, really listen to what people are saying. Because I know there's a difference between listening to hear and listening to respond. And I think you have to start off first with just listening to hear, and not being so quick to respond. First, just really listening to hear what a person is saying, and then letting that sit, and then responding. Because I know a lot of times, especially when you get into subjects like this, people are listening, but they already are coming into it with, this is what I think, and this is, you know what I mean? And so I think too, because of that, then you get a lot of things, you miss things. And just one more thing, and then we can wrap it up. Just one more thing too that came out in part one when we were talking about Rachel Dolezal and her son, Rachel Dolezal. Yes, she's well, I would argue it's going further than cultural appropriation because she's just not wearing the style. She's like changing her skin color and like going to extremes to quote unquote be
that's something different.
Black woman. Yeah, that's totally different. I just wanted to clear that up. That is beyond cultural appropriation. Now, but her son, because his father is Black, then he is inherently born into being Black. If he chooses, whether or not he chooses to embrace Black culture, that's his personal opinion. I can't speak to that. He can either choose to, participate in Black culture. And when I say participate, what I mean by is, if he wants to, because again, this podcast is about hair, right? I'm just talking about in those terms. If he chooses to wear cornrows or, some twists or something like that, even if people will say you're appropriating, no, his father is Black. He is born into the culture. Now, whether he participates in the culture or not, that is his choice. That is on him. You don't have to. There's a lot of people who are born into cultures, but they don't necessarily participate with everything that is a part of that culture. But I would also argue you cannot appropriate it if you do choose to take part of it because you are born into it, right? So like I have friends who are Indian, right? But they may not choose to have a arranged marriage. That is a part of the culture. Whether they choose to participate in that or not is, but if they were to get an arranged marriage, they're not appropriating or, and so to take it back to hair, if you choose to, because I know that people will say certain things to Tia and just other people, that they, in my opinion, that is not what cultural appropriation is. It is when you are foreign. This is foreign to it. This is not something that is inherently you were born into and now you're doing it. And you can do those things in a respectful way. And you can do those things in a way that is not respectful. So really, those are my thoughts. And Tia, thoughts. That's our thoughts on cultural appropriation. Again, if you have any questions about things that happened in part one or part two, or anything you feel like you want to add to the conversation, please just be respectful. At the end of the day, we really wanted to do this part one and part two. And it was funny because we kind of knew we were going to have to do a part two because, we knew that, it's heavy, it's a lot, and it is a lot to try to do in, 30 minutes to an hour. But once we seen it, we really knew, we got it. We have to go back and just make a lot of things really, really clear. And, because it got really deep. It got into a lot of other things and not just cultural appropriation. So I hope that if you weren't clear about cultural appropriation and different things before hearing this, that you're definitely more clear. And again, if you have questions for me or Tia when it comes to this or wanting to wear, your certain wigs or styles, just, ask, because that's the first way, right? If you don't ask and you don't know. And we are here to, we really want to educate you because we know at the end of the day, this is our little piece in getting us to where we should go and getting us into where we need to be. Having conversations like this is the first steps, I believe, to continue to, be on that path. So thank you for listening and watching. Thumbs up the video if you're watching. If you're listening, wherever you're listening, please rate and review the show. And, we're going to be here next Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
Right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
If you enjoyed the episode and you'd like to help support the Wig Life podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating or review wherever you like to listen.
To stay up to date with the Wig Life podcast, visit our website and follow us on socials everywhere at Wig Life Podcast. See you.